people out of Egypt.
God blesses whoever hears this, so that your soul might be saved. By way of introduction, my name is Shawn I was born not born, but raised in Bernice, Louisiana, small town, population 2,500. Technically right outside of it in a small community by the name of Pisgah. When I was 19 years old, I joined the Marine Corps, and I actually have this to show you. This is my military ID. That's me as a staff sergeant in the Marines. I know that I've gained a lot of weight. This is my Marine Corps active duty card that I should have turned in when I left, but after 13 years they owed me something. I only had another 7 to go to retire, but just wasn't happy, so I got out, and now I'm living in California. I am happy now. I've married, have a beautiful little baby girl. She just turned 2 years old, and but the thing that I want to tell you about is something that happened to me while I was still in the Marine Corps, and this is my testimony of hell. I believe, if my memory doesn't fail me, it was April the 4th of 1994, which is kind of a hard date to forget, 444. I was in 29 Palms, California, but we Marines called it 29 Stumps. And in the middle of this desert, there was a little tiny camp called Camp Wilson. I was in the middle of a training cycle because I was with artillery, and every time we go from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, to 29 Palms, California, to do training, we stay there for 2 months. In the very middle of it, we have a 4-day period of leave. We call it a 96, which is 24 times 4. Anyway, if you do the math in your head real quickly, you'll see that it's 96 hours. I was at that time not a what I would consider a Christian. I'd grown up in a Baptist church. I knew about heaven and hell, and well, as much as anyone can know when you're only 22 years old. But I wouldn't really consider myself a staunch Christian. At that time, I was pretty much doing my own thing, living my own life, my own way. Was not married, but still sleeping around, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, just basically living the life of a hellion. and during this 4-day period that we're waiting for one set of ground pounders, or grunts as we call them, to go home, and the other ones to come to California for training, because they only train for 3 weeks when they go to California. So one company leaves, the other one comes back, and it's a 4-day transition. During that 4-day transition, we as artillery are given an alternative between 3 choices. 1, stay at the camp because you're completely broke. 2, go to Disneyland or Disney World, whichever it is in California. And 3, to go to a Vegas package, obviously, which is drinking, gambling, so on and so forth. I myself had drank like a fish pretty much every night, so I was broke, along with 2 other devil dogs, as we like to call ourselves. One by the name of Jason Laycock. At that time, he was a corporal in S2 Intelligence, and the other one was Toby Page, who was also a corporal in S1 Administration. I myself was S3, which is Fire Directional Control. And at that time, I was a Lance Corporal, so I was 1 rank beneath them. So Lance Corporal Shawn Weed, or Lance Corporal Weed, because we only pretty much went by last names anyway. I know, strange name. Anyway, we were sitting around in 110-degree sweltering weather because it was just really nothing else to do at camp other than sit around and talk. So we were all 3 sitting around. Corporal Laycock broke out his pictures, and we were all sitting around looking at him, and he took some extraordinary pictures because he had the opportunity to go right up to the edge of the impact area. And even we both had an argument about him going into the buffer zone, but they have like an 800-meter buffer zone around the impact area, and he drove right up through that. No one's supposed to pass that buffer zone, but he drove right into it and got right up on the edge of the impact area and took some amazing photos. He was one of those guys that was intelligent, but at the same time was always willing to push the barriers of stupidity, which he did. But needless to say, the photos that he took were absolutely stunning. After we got through viewing his photos, he broke out his camera and realized he only had 3 photos left to take before it was the end of the film. So he had us get up. He took a picture of his green folding cot, which had everything he owned underneath it. Alice pack, sea bag, boots, you name it, it was all underneath there. And then we took a buddy picture where we were like leaning on each other, like, you know, best of friends. And then for his last picture, he looks at it and goes, "Oh, I only have 1 left." And then he looks over and he sees this noose dangling from the ceiling. The noose was made of hay rope, which had tiny little sprigs sticking out from it. And the noose was hanging from a rafter that was inside the A-frame, was only about 6 foot 8 inches from the ground, and the noose actually hung all the way down till it was about 1.5 feet off the ground. So it wasn't like anybody was worried about hanging themselves. You'd have to lay down on the ground to hang yourself with this thing, literally. And of course, it was made of hay rope, so it wasn't like wax rope, which slides really easily to close the noose. So I mean, you could literally step your foot in the noose without having to lift your knee above a 90-degree angle and stand up on it. Grab the rope and literally stand up inside the noose, and it wouldn't tighten down around your foot. At least not before your foot touched the ground anyway. So you can put your full body weight on it. So I mean, Marines, when they get bored, they do all kinds of stupid things with rope. You know, like this one guy made a muzzle for a horse. Another guy took it and made daisy chains out of it, and another guy just took it and made a 13-knot noose. He was absolutely bored, had nothing to do. Nobody really cared. We always just went around it. It wasn't like it was a big deal or anything. But anyway, for the last picture, he looks over at the noose and he goes, "I got an idea." And usually when an intelligence guy says that, it usually ends up being the equivalent of, you know, a redneck saying, "Hey, y'all, watch this." You know, so it usually turns out bad for everyone, which it did. Anyway, he since I was the lowest man on the totem pole, he says, "Hey, Weed, why don't you?" And of course, on top of that, I was a little bit crazy. He said, "Hey, Weed, why don't you go over there and stick your head inside that noose and act like you're dead, and I'll take the last picture." I'm like, okay. Thinking to myself, not a bad idea. And I went over there, started at the noose, and of course I had to kneel down, so I squatted down, towards the ground, so I'd have a little bit of tension on the rope, so it looked like I was actually hanging, and he was just going to take a picture from my waist up. Anyway, he went to take the picture, and the batteries had died, so the camera obviously just shut down. So he went back over there and was replacing the batteries. While he was doing that, Corporal Page walked up and began whispering in his ear, and that should have automatically given it away, and it kind of did. I was kind of suspicious from that point, but it was those suspicions were kind of like thrown out when Corporal Laycock looks at him, and goes, "No, that's not the way it works. If I buy, you fly." And he took out his wallet, took out a $10 bill, and gave it to Corporal Page, and Corporal Page went running out the back door. And in the meantime, he had to replace the camera, replace the batteries in the camera, and we went back over there, and he was giving me direction. He's like, "All right, now let your arms dangle loose. Now close your eyes. Relax them. Don't make any wrinkles. Stick your tongue out a little. Cock your head to the side a little bit. And he's giving me all these instructions so to make a real-looking photo. And I didn't know it, but at that time, he was using his voice to mask the footsteps that were sneaking up behind me. Corporal Page had gone out the front door and came in the back door right behind me and was sneaking up on me. He grabbed the knot and slammed it down around my throat, just as I had exhaled. So immediately I stood up, stunned, because I didn't know. Number one, I didn't know that he was sneaking up behind me. Number two, I just got this rope slammed down around my neck, and number three, I couldn't breathe. So I immediately stood up, and I knew I had just seconds left, maybe 6 to 8 seconds, because I had just exhaled and I couldn't breathe back in. So I jammed a finger into the knot and actually scratched my neck in the process of doing it. I grabbed I had a finger in the noose, and I grabbed the knot in the back, and I was pulling against it. But what I didn't understand is that the rope comes down through the knot, comes off to the side around your neck, and then comes back up through. So if you don't grab this knot and twist it over to the side, you'll never get this rope to slide because it's at an L. It's like this. It's hooked into there, and it won't come loose until you straighten it out. Of course, it was on the back of my neck, and I didn't have all that much time to think about it. So I'm just grabbing the knot and pulling for all that I'm worth. And with one finger, it was just not enough strength. So I shoved another finger in there and grabbed the knot. And I knew I only had seconds left. And I said to myself, I have one shot, one chance to get this right. Otherwise, I'm a dead man. So I shoved the second finger in there, and I grabbed the knot, and I closed my eyes, and I clenched my teeth, and I pulled for everything that I was worth. And I felt something give way, and I fell forward, and I was out, and I was glad to be out. And the guys, they just looked at me, and they go, like this, and I gave them a few choice words, which I will not repeat. Anyway, they just turned around and went over and sat down on their cots, and I went over and sat down with them. I sat down right beside Corporal Jason Laycock, and Corporal Toby Page was sitting right across from him. Corporal Page reached underneath his cot and pulled out a brown paper bag. He unrolled it, and inside of it was a white AFES bag filled with what we call gee-dunk, or snacks, candy, soda, stuff like that, chocolate, chocolate chip cookies, whatever. And I actually leaned forward and looked down inside the bag, and I saw that he had mostly some Ho-Hos and some Twinkies and Star Crunches. He had a couple Gatorades inside there, lemon, lime, orange. And at that point I was like, okay, you didn't need anything to eat. You already had a bag full, but in the meantime, he began, he closed up his bag and was eating some Ho-Hos, which comes 3 in a package. And these are the ones with the chocolate icing around the outside, but in the inside it looks like a swirl of chocolate cake and icing. Pretty good. You can actually twirl them and eat them at the same time until there's nothing left at the center. But anyway, he was munching on that and telling this story about how the last time he came back from CAX, which is Combined Arm Exercise, that's when artillery, the infantry, and air all assault the target at the same time. Of course, it's well coordinated to make sure that we don't hit each other. That would be a bad thing and result in many lost lives, which is not a good thing during training. Of course, if you don't train that way, you don't win in battle. When the stakes are really there and the stakes are really high, so you got to train as if it was the real thing, and that's what we do. We train hard and long, and sometimes we train dangerously, but overall it helps us come home alive. But anyway, I just blanked out. Anyway, he was telling this story about how he'd come back from Combined Arms Exercise, and how he was wearing his tuxedo, how he went to Club 108 and slid across the dance floor, knelt down and gave his girlfriend a dozen roses. It was while wearing these bear shoes that have little claws on them, kind of like you wear when you're about to lounge around your house in your pajamas. Well, anyway, it was a strange story, I know, but probably not as strange as the one I'm telling. But anyway, he took about 5 minutes to tell this story, and I'd heard it once already, so I was just sitting there listening, sitting next to Corporal Jason Laycock. And Jason Laycock was just pestering, just bugging him to death for one of those Ho-Hos. Every 15 seconds he'd be like, yeah, can I get one? Oh yeah, that's neat. How about now? And he's just, pestering him, and I'm just looking at the two. And 3 times while he was telling this story, he leaned over and he would look me right in the face as he was wrapping up the third one and wrapping up his story. And finally, he gave over half of a Ho-Ho to Jason Laycock. He leans over and he looks at me right in the face. And he's only 4 feet away from me. He leans over and he looks me right in the face. He goes, "I don't think he's playing." Of course, we're the only 3 in the room, so I'm just like, what's he talking about? So Jason Laycock and I turn and look back, and sure enough, there's my body hanging from the noose. Needless to say, I was completely shocked. I don't have that great of eyesight. I need glasses, and at that time it was no different. But I could still tell from the outline that it was me. So I immediately, just shocked, I just stood up. And I turned and faced my body, which was hanging from that noose roughly about 30 feet away. And I walked out, and I walked over closer till I was about, maybe 15 feet away, so I could get a better look. And sure enough, it was definitely me. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking to myself, how can I be there and here at the same time? I look down, and I'm sure enough, I'm wearing the same green t-shirt, the same brown weld belt, the same camouflage pants, the same black boots. I even pulled my dog tags out, and I was still wearing them. But it was when I pulled my dog tags out that I dropped them, and I looked at my hand, and I realized that if I stared at my hand, I could see through my hand and see the sand on the ground. And that's when I realized I was dead. And I had been dead and sitting next to my friends for 5 minutes, and then I realized they didn't even know I was there. They couldn't see me. That's when Jason Laycock came up, and he knelt down beside me, and he took a photograph of my body hanging from that noose. And I was standing there right beside him, and of course he had no clue that I was standing beside him. But anyway, he goes, "Now that's a good picture," and snaps the last photo. The film began to rewind, and Corporal Toby Page walked up and looked beside him and just gave him this stupid look, like, "Are you?" And he actually said exactly what I was thinking. "Are you retarded?" He goes, "Look at him." And of course, he was saying a few expletives, which I will not repeat. But he goes, "Look at him." He goes, "His nose is blue. His lips are blue. His eyelids are blue. There's drool hanging out of his mouth all the way down to the ground." And he goes, "Are you a bleeping retard?" You know. And he stood up and he took a couple steps forward. I mean, because Jason Laycock has these really thick bottle lens glasses, and his eyesight's no better than mine. And I'm going to give you a basic description of Jason Laycock. Jason Laycock was an S2 intelligence, very intelligent guy. Despite all the funny things you can say about intelligence people, he really was intelligent. Kind of nerdish, a little bit underweight, probably about 110 pounds, 5'10", maybe 5'9", and but not a bad looking guy. I mean, if he had packed on a few more pounds, maybe 30, 40 pounds, he would, I'd put him in the handsome category. But Corporal Page was probably about 5'9", 5'10", about the same height. Only he was a real buff guy because he worked out in the gym a lot. Most administration guys, S1 administration guys, don't go to the field all that often. So he's probably spent 3 or 4 hours in the gym every day. He had a little bit of an acne problem. That's probably from taking all those supplements. But anyway, after he took the picture and the little guy berated him a little bit, Corporal Jason Laycock stood up, took a couple steps forward, and then realized that what he was saying was true. He saw that my extremities on my face were blue, so he tossed his camera off over towards his rack, not really caring for its care at all where it landed. He just tossed it. And he ran forward and he grabbed my body around the waist and picked up. When he did this, he screamed for Corporal Page to come over there and get the noose off my neck. Now, myself, I was thinking it was a little bit backwards. I mean, the tough guy should have been picking me up while the other guy was getting the rope off my neck. In my mind, that's the way that it should have worked. I'm glad that it didn't work that way, though, because otherwise I would still be in that noose. Because Corporal Page, for all his strength, barely got the noose off my neck. And I mean, he had to really struggle with it, and it was something to watch him struggle with it. While he was struggling with it, I actually thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to try to step into my body and stand up. And bad idea. When I tried that, when I stepped forward trying to step forward into my body, it was just like somebody slugged me. I mean, just as hard as I could possibly be hit. And the sense of vertigo came over, it overtook me and just weakened me. So I actually stumbled backwards like dizzy. And I said, okay, bad idea. And that's actually when I became concerned. I wasn't too concerned before. Even though I realized I was dead, I was not concerned about it, which is an odd thing, I know. And mostly unbelievable. I mean, I was just mostly in shock. Anyway, they managed, for all his strength, it took him 2 or 3 tries to get the rope off my neck, and he was just exhausted afterwards. I mean, his arms were completely burned out. And like I said, this is a guy who lifts weight in the gym constantly. So he really exerted himself. If it had been the other way around, Jason's small frame would have never been able to get that rope off my neck, even though the other guy could probably held me up for hours. But it never would have come off. So anyway, they drag my body over and they throw it on my rack. And immediately, Uncle Page began to freak out. I mean, he's like, "Oh my God, we gotta tell somebody. We gotta do something." I mean, he was in the go mode while Uncle Page was sitting over there like the thinker. You could tell his mind was just turning at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And he was looking over at Uncle Page, and he was like, "Shut up, stop pacing." And I'm thinking. I mean, he was the thinker. I mean, if he could have come with a way or a story to throw over this so that they could have gotten out of it, he would have been the one to come up with it. While the other guy was just completely freaking out. In the meantime, I thought, okay, well, this is my opportunity. My body's not moving around anymore. It's laying down. It's in a stable position. I'll just lay back down into my body. And so that's pretty much what I did. I placed my foot inside of my foot and my other foot inside my foot, and I sat down just like I'm sitting now. And I looked back and saw how my body was laying and how my head was positioned, so I just leaned back into my body. And as my head went inside my head, because you got to remember, my soul was laying down into my body. I know it sounds weird when I say my foot inside my foot, my head inside my head, but you'll get the picture now. So anyway, I'm leaning back, and as soon as my head falls inside my head, I'm instantaneously standing up, and I'm in complete darkness. I mean, it's a darkness that you could almost feel. I know it sounds weird, it doesn't make any sense, but that's the only way that I can put it. I mean, because this darkness had like a texture to it, and it was complete darkness. It was just solid black. And I know the first thing I thought to myself is, well, where am I? And I had no clue where I was. I was still wearing everything that I'd been wearing before, only I was just in this place that I didn't recognize at all. And the first thing I noticed is that there is nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean absolutely nothing. There's no light, no wind, no sound, nothing. And I thought to myself, there can't be nothing. I'm standing on something. So I looked down, and I'm standing on nothing. I mean, the only way I can liken it to is if you went inside of a giant warehouse and elevated yourself a good 30 feet off the ground until you stood on a plate of glass, so that when you dimmed the lights you couldn't see the ground beneath you, but yet you could still see beneath you. That's the only way I can explain it to. It was like standing on air that was hard as stone, but had no reflection. It was like standing on hardened air or glass that had no reflection. That's the closest I can come to explaining it. But when you look down, you could literally see beneath your feet for a couple feet down, but you were standing on nothing. And I thought to myself, well, if I was in a completely dark room, I wouldn't be able to see my hand in front of my face. How is it that I'm able to see with? There's light coming from somewhere. And so I looked up, because that's where pretty much all sources of light are, whether you're inside or outside, they're above you. So I looked up, and I see nothing. And that's when I realized that I was the one that was emanating the light that I was able to see with. I was glowing like a chem light, those little shaped lights that you use for walking around on Halloween, or for the military. We used it for different things, but the little chemical lights that had the little glass thing in it, and you break them and you shake them up. I was glowing like that. I was glowing this very, very dim white light that I was able to see maybe 10 feet in a complete 360 all around me. In all directions I could see away from me, because I was emanating this light. But that's how dim it was. I thought to myself, okay, well, I don't understand how I'm emanating this light. It doesn't make any sense to me, but what I do know is one thing. I'm standing on some kind of ground. And I thought to myself, if there's a ground, maybe there's a ceiling. So I went to reach my hand up, and as I reached my hand up, I touched the ceiling without touching it. And I know how ridiculous that sounds. But if you can imagine your consciousness reaching up and touching something and knowing for 100% sure that it's there without having to physically touch it. I mean, it's not such a alien concept in all actuality. I mean, because with light, we're able to see everything around us. I mean, I can see that mirror that's, a good 15 feet behind me, maybe 20 feet behind me. I can see that mirror. I don't have to go over there and touch it to know it's real. But I know for 100% sure that it's there. And the same way, and it kind of shocked me because I jerked my hand back down. I was like, whoa, there's a ceiling up there, and I know that it's there. I can't see it, but I know for 100% sure that it's there. And I said, okay, I don't understand that either. There's a lot of things I didn't understand about this place, but or how I was able to feel things without touching them. I mean, some of these things just made no sense to me whatsoever. But I thought to myself, okay, there's a floor, there's a ceiling. Ceilings don't hold themselves up. There's got to be a wall somewhere. If there's a wall, there's a door, there's a window, there's a way out of here. So I went to take a step forward to go find myself a door to get out. And as I took a step forward, the only way I can describe it is like a rubber band. If you take a rubber band, you can stretch it. And that's how it's either my body did or my consciousness did. All I know is I found myself moving forward at a very rapid pace, but yet my back foot was still in place. As I stretched out and wanted to go that direction, I did at a very rapid pace. I stretched out maybe like 1, 2, 3 football fields, while the back stays in place, the front stretching out, and that's the only way I can explain it. All I know is I knew for 100% sure that I was moving forward at a very rapid pace, but I was getting nowhere. So with my back foot in place, I began to spin, and as I'm stretching out, I began to realize that I'm standing in between 2 parallel planes that stretch on forever, and there's no walls, there's no doors, there's no windows. I'm trapped in between these 2 parallel planes, and there's no way out. And when I realized that, I pulled my foot back and put it down without even having left where I was standing. Like I said, I stretched out at least 3 football fields worth of length, a good 300 yards. And from that point, I became very scared. And but before I could even think another thought, I was snatched up off of my feet by a very, very large demon. Of course, for me, I didn't know what had happened. It was like getting hit by a truck and having no clue that it was ever coming. This thing had come up behind me so fast, and it caught me by complete surprise, and it was so big. I can't possibly begin to describe what it's like being, what it feels like to be in the grips of something that big. But I'll do my best. 1 minute I'm standing there, the next minute I'm leaning backwards like this. My feet are out more or less in front of me, and they're popping. And I have this pain just shooting from my head to my feet like a bolt of electricity, but it's not stopping. It's like being constantly shocked or electrocuted. And I had this pounding sensation, just hurting pounding sensation coming from my left shoulder that hurts even worse than this electricity that's running through my body. And I look to my left, and I see these fingers which come down to roughly the bottom of my chest. And it was even hard to look over to the side because the depth of its hand was like this. The width of its hand was like this. I mean, it literally went from the side of my neck out to maybe past the end of my shoulder, the width of its hand. The color of its skin was black and red. Now, I don't know if it was red with black shadows moving across it, or if it was red with a black oily substance like a cloud moving beneath the skin, so that it makes it have a perception of moving while it's standing still. You know, kind of like the sky stands still and the clouds will move across it. Kind of like that. I'm watching these giant red fingers with blackness moving through it. Now, like I said, I don't know if it was shadows or if it was a substance beneath the skin. All I know is the fingers were very big. Each one was about this big around and roughly about this long. And this thing was crushing my left shoulder. Now, one thing I do understand in retrospect is that pain when you have no body. When you have a body, I can break a finger and it only hurts here where the break is. It doesn't hurt at my feet. But when you're in your soul's body, when your soul experiences pain, you experience it everywhere because there's no pain receptors to stop your brain from saying, oh, it hurts here. No, it hurts everywhere. Anywhere you experience pain, it runs through your body like electricity. You feel it from the very top of your hairs to the bottom of the soles of your feet. If I hit you in the leg, you would feel it in your ear. For as weird as that sounds, you would feel it everywhere. Because, like I said, there's no specific pain receptors. You just feel pain as if it were a bolt of electricity through your entire body. The only thing that lets you know exactly where you received that pain from would be that pounding sensation, kind of like a heartbeat. That throbbing sensation when you got an infection. That's the only thing that lets you know exactly where you've been hit. You feel it everywhere, though. And this thing had a hold of me, and I'm looking down at these fingers, and I'm just thinking to myself, well, what is this that has a hold of me? And as I'm thinking this, I understand now, also in retrospect, that anything that you think in this place can be heard as if you had spoken it out loud. And this thing had me like this and was just smiling at me. It looked back and it was smiling at me, waiting for me to look at it. And when I looked over my shoulder and up at it, it was already staring at me. And I understand now that it had heard what I was thinking and just wanted to give me a nice little shock, you know, on top of the pain that I was already experiencing. Just because of the grotesqueness of its face. I mean, this thing was grotesque. And it was huge. Overall, the thing, and I know this sounds already more crazy than everything that I've already said, but this thing is 13 feet tall, and it's not like I sat there and said, okay, stand still, let me grab a step ladder and measure you. Where's my tape measure? You know, no. Anything that you want to know in this place, all you have to do is ask it. Ask it in your mind or ask it out loud, and the answer will be given to you. It doesn't matter. And I thought to myself, how big is this thing? And the answer immediately came to me, 13 feet. It was exactly 13 feet tall. And I didn't ask myself how much it weighed, otherwise I would know that too. All I know is the thing was huge. It was built like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. I mean, just ripped full of muscles. Just big. It's, like I said, its skin was black and red. It had no hair whatsoever on its body. None. Like no hair up here, no mustache, no beard, no hair on the knuckles like I have. Just completely hairless. It's completely humanoid in shape, though. I mean, it had 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 mouth, 1 nose, 2 ears. Other than that, it looked completely human. The differences was this, where our eyes are white. Its was yellow, and where the iris of our eyes can be green or blue or brown, its was gold, and diamond shaped like a snake's, and it had a really flat nose. I mean, just looked like somebody was literally pushing its nose against his face, and its nose was easily as wide as its mouth. So really flat, really wide nose, and gleaming white teeth. I mean, perfectly shaped, just like a human's, a little bit better than mine. And it had, the only thing that looked really strange about its teeth was it had, where we had our canines, it had two tusks coming up out of its mouth like a boar, like a wild pig. It was I said it was just very large, 13 feet tall, and just extremely muscular. And this thing, like I said, it just picked me up like I weighed nothing to it. And it was taking me along for a ride. And but just I only looked at its face for, I would say, a second, and that's all that it took. Yeah, I was just, as a man, I'm not afraid of any other man on the face of this earth. I will fight anybody. I don't care how much bigger they are than me. But this thing, there was no fighting it. I mean, it was far too big. I mean, 13 feet tall versus 6 feet tall. I could stack another one of me on top of my head and still not be as tall as it. You know, and if I had to guess, I would say roughly about in between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds. I mean, I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing, but I would say that's a pretty fair estimate. The thing, like I said, it just picked me up and took off with me, and I'm not sure if my feet were popping out of just sheer pain, or if it was the speed at which we were moving. But this thing was running. It had me by one hand, by the shoulder. It had me by the shoulder with one hand, and it was moving at a very, very fast velocity. If I would guess, I would say probably at over 80 to 100 miles an hour. Just rough guess. It may have been faster than that, I don't know. But all I know is the thing was moving very, very fast. And had complete control. I mean, just there was nothing at all I could do to get away or anything like that. And I looked at its face for only a second, and that was enough to scare me. It would be enough to scare anybody, I'm pretty sure. And I looked away from it, and from that point forward, the only way I can describe it is all hope just poured out of me. I literally felt hope and emotion as if it were a physical substance, like water in a cup just being poured out of me. I literally felt hope pour out of me, starting from the inside of my head. It just drained out of my body all the way down and right out through my feet. And once hope left me, it was like I became numb. My feet were still popping, but I couldn't feel any pain. It was just like I was just drained completely of all strength. Any energy that I had was just gone. It was of all strength. Any energy that I had was just gone. It was I don't know if this is in the Bible or not, but I think that the strength of hope is in God. You know, and without God, without any hope, you don't really have a reason to live. You don't have a reason to fight. You don't have any strength whatsoever. So without hope, you don't have strength. And I know that's kind of grasping at straws in a way, but for me it makes sense. And after hope left me, and I was just kind of like going along for the ride, just numb, realizing that this thing was taking me wherever it wanted to take me. That's the next thought that came to me, is where is it taking me? And then the thought instantly came to my mind, the answer did. And the answer was, it's taking you to hell. Now, when I grew up in a Baptist church, I was taught hell was fire and brimstone. That's an empty void of an area. But that's also in the Bible too. We just don't pay much attention. And they shall be cast out into outer darkness, where there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The outer darkness that they're speaking of is where I landed. For those who are evangelical and believe that hell was literally split in half at one time before Jesus died on the cross, into one part that was called Abraham's bosom, and to another part that was the portion of fire where people were still tortured, as Jesus talked about it in one of his parables. I think this was one of those things that was not really a parable. I think it was a true story of Lazarus and the rich man, where the one was being consoled in Abraham's bosom, and the other, and only separated by a short distance by an impassable chasm. But I think that they were both portions of those things were in hell, but the demons couldn't cross over into the nice part. And I believe, and this is just my own personal assumption, that when Jesus descended down into hell, he descended not down into the fire and brimstone portion of it, but down into the Abraham's bosom portion of it, and he took those people back with him, and more or less took the land with him and all the people, and connected it to the city of God, which is where he came from. He connected that outer portion of green land where there was water. Remember, because Lazarus said, if you could just, the rich man said, if Lazarus could just dip his finger in water and bring it over here, because I'm burning up in these flames. There was water there, so there was land there was grass there was trees there. I mean, it was a viable land as much as this earth is a viable land, just in a heavenly realm sort of way. But anyway, I understood that it was taking me to the portion that I did not, certainly anyone would not want to go to, which was the fire and brimstone portion. It was going to take me to that fiery lake and cast me in, and I understood that. And when I understood that, it was mortally appalling, is the only way I can put it. I mean, it played over and over in my head again. It's taking me to hell, it's taking me to hell, it's taking me to hell. And there was just nothing I could do. Nothing I could do to stop it, nothing I could do to prevent it. And I just kind of dropped my head. And while this is playing over and over and over in my head that it's taking me to hell, and I saw this pinpoint of light, well, before I saw the pinpoint of light, I started thinking to myself, this is wrong. I'm not a bad guy. I've never murdered anyone. I've never molested any children. I've never raped any women or done anything just drastic that would cause you to be placed in hell for sure. For me, I was just an average person. I drank a few beers, smoked a few cigarettes. I wasn't like into drugs or anything like that. I mean, I was just an average guy. I go to church every once in a while, so I didn't really picture myself as bad. Not bad enough to end up in hell, but one thing that I understand now is there's plenty of good people in hell. A lot of people that used to call themselves Christians are there. And it's because they didn't really devote their life to God. They lived one foot in and one foot out like I did, And you don't have to be a bad person to go to hell. All you have to do is just be average. And God doesn't call us to be average. He calls us to be holy, like He is, And what that really means is you gotta for lack of better words, you don't have to become a Bible-thumping Christian, but you should devote your life to God for as much as you possibly can. And if that puts me in the category of Bible-thumping Christian, then so be it. I'm a Bible-thumping Christian. I would rather be that than in the middle. Because I know where in the middle gets you. It gets you in the same place that being fully against him gets you. It's kind of like he said in Revelations 3:20, I wish that you were all the way for me or all the way against me, but because you were in the middle, because you were lukewarm, I spit you out. You know, now I don't want to be that again. I don't want to go back to hell. I know it's there, and I know the place is not made for us. It was made for them, and we just unfortunately do not realize the reality of the place. The reality of the place is far worse than you can imagine, and I only experienced a taste of it. I landed on the doorstep of hell, is the way I like to look at it. Or you can even say I landed in the middle of hell, but it wasn't fire and brimstone, although I know for certain that it does exist because that's where it was taking me. And although I never laid eyes on the flames, I know that they really do exist. But as I was thinking this to myself, that I'm not such a bad guy, why am I ending up here? That's when that light appeared. And I looked up at it, it looked like a star far off in the night sky. Something so tiny and insignificant and far away that it couldn't possibly help me. And then I saw it moved off to the left a little bit, and I picked my eyes up, my head up, and I looked at it, and I thought to myself, did we just change direction, or did it move? And it went back to the right, and I thought for myself, no, for certain, we didn't change direction, it moved. And I thought to myself, well, what is that? And as I thought that, and began to focus in on it, it just came rushing at me like the only way I can describe it is the speed of this thing was like a bolt of lightning. It came at me so fast that one moment it was just like a tiny little star in the night sky, and the next minute, white, bright, blinding white light. And his hand was reaching down to me, and it was an angel. It's all right. And my hand just reached up and grabbed its hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to reach up there and grab his hand, and this hand is going to save me, because that's all that I saw was just a hand. But my hand knew what to do. It was like having a baseball throw at your head. Somebody says heads up, and you just reach up and grab it. It's a reflex. My hand just reflects. And a reflex just jumped up and grabbed this angel's hand. And as soon as I touched its hand, we were all motionless and all standing back up on this ground that you can't see. And this beast, this demon, it still had me by the shoulder. It was kind of almost even leaned over a little bit to grab me by the shoulder. And I could instinctively, I knew to stand still, because if I had moved, I know that it would have ripped my shoulder and my arm off at the same time and just beat me with it. I mean, the thing was just that massively strong. I knew within me there was something telling me, don't move. And I'm just standing there staring up, looking at this angel. And the angel itself, to describe it for you, was 9 feet 6 inches tall. It had brown wavy hair pushed to the back. It had an olive color skin. It wasn't really white, it wasn't really black, it was somewhere in between, but the light that was emanating from within it was so bright white that it almost practically overshadowed the color of its skin. You couldn't even really, you had to stare to see the color of its skin. And I keep saying it because it's an it. It's not really a he or a she. Although the body is shaped like a he. Okay, it's shaped like a male. When you look at its face, the face is like the most handsome man that you've ever seen, blended in perfectly with the most beautiful woman that you've ever seen. I mean, when you look at this angel, you think to yourself, wow, he is beautiful. And I know that's some odd words to say. In the English vernacular, the male is known as handsome and the female is known as beautiful. But this angel was absolutely beautiful. There's no other words for it. And its eyes were blue. And when I mean blue, I mean perfect blue. Like someone took a portion of the sky and put it in its eyes, or dipped a cup out of the ocean and poured it into its eye. There was no flaw in it. No flaw. Perfectly beautiful in all ways. Other than its face looking like the cross between a man and a woman, and I don't mean like, oh, is it Pat? No. I mean just beautiful. It was completely shaped like a man. You could see it underneath its white robe. It had chest and it had strong arms. It had an Adam's apple. I mean, it was every bit shaped like a man, and a strong one. I mean, just strong, but not like overly ridiculous like this. It wasn't bodybuilder. It was more like fitness trainer strong. It wasn't like bodybuilder strong, where it just had muscles popping out of everywhere it shouldn't have been, like this demon. But you could tell it was, this angel was there to fight. And he had on a white robe. It was cut down in a V in the front with gold lace. I guess, I don't even know what to call it, like embroidered gold around the edges of its collar. And not lace, but embroidered gold. And the sleeves came just below the elbows, and this robe was kind of like a white Roman tunic robe. I guess that would be the best way of putting it. And it came just below its knees. So its knees and its elbows were covered. And I was just so blown away by the beauty of it that I didn't even really check to see if it had any shoes on or not. I don't really remember. All I know is it was big. Not as quite as big as the demon, but big enough. And I'm looking up at it, and I'm just blown away by its brightness and its beauty. And at the same time, I'm just frozen in place, because I know that if I move this thing, it's going to rip my shoulder off and just beat me with my arm. And this thing, I can feel its anger, this demon's anger, like heat from a fire. And it turns around like this to see what had stopped it and why. It wanted to know what had stopped it and why. Because technically I was right where I belonged. And once you're there in hell, you don't normally get a chance to leave. So it owned me like a piece of furniture, like your car. It owned me, and it wanted to know why it was being stopped. So it turned around and was ready to fight. Make no mistake, this demon was ready to get down in the worst way. But as it whipped around, this angel its speed was incredible, and it just rushed forward and with an open palm hit this demon, and it had to angle its arm upwards at about the height of its head to hit this demon in the chest. And it hit this demon with such power. I mean, I can't describe the fierceness of the power of this thing, but it hit this demon with such force that its hand was literally ripped from my shoulder. It had no clue what had hit it. By the time it had even turned its head, it was already hit. And this demon was hit with such force that it literally folded up and started flying backwards, folded in half like this, flying backwards. And I'm just watching it fly backwards and skip off this ground that you can't see, like a stone over water. And this angel looked at me and he called me by a long name, and I immediately understood it to be mine. It was a heavenly name. But as soon as it called me this name, it took it from my mind. It called me this name to let me know that, more or less, that I still have a chance to make it into heaven. You know, like, I have a heavenly name. I squandered it. I wasted it. And if this had been my ultimate time, my last breath, for real, that's where I would have stayed. But when he called me this long name, it was a feeling of home. You know, like when your mom calls you for dinner or supper, however you want to say it, and you know that it's time to go in and eat, and you're all happy, you know, because you just stayed outside playing forever, you know, and you're about to go in and sit with your family. It was like that. You know, it was a feeling of home. And it looked at me and it began to speak to me, and its voice was like a waterfall. If a waterfall could speak, it was like a rushing sound in your ears, like Shawn. And I understood later on that it was converting my understanding to understand its language. It didn't descend down to my broken language of English. It elevated me up to understand its language. It messed with my mind, for lack of better words, but it elevated my understanding. And he looks at me and he says, "Hello, my name is Michael." And I immediately knew that this was the archangel of the Bible that it spoke of, the archangel Michael. And I can tell you for certain, I've seen them both. I've seen the archangel and I've seen Jesus, and they look nothing alike. And they are not the same being. But anyway, he said, he began to speak to me, but I got distracted by this demon that had gotten back up and was coming back after me. It was coming back to get me. And it was coming back to fight this angel for my soul. And so I turned back because I knew that it was coming. I'm sorry. So it was, this angel was still talking to me, so I wasn't really listening to it. I was too focused in on this thing, and it was getting bigger. It was running back after me, and it was getting faster, and it was getting bigger, so it was coming back after me, you know, from this great distance that this angel hit it. And so I looked back at him like, whatever you got to say, please just hurry up and say it, and if you're going to get me out of here, please get me out of here. You know, and this is what I was literally thinking. You know, and he just looked at me and he gave me a saddened look, and he looked at me and he just goes, "Your time has not yet come. It's time for you to go." And he points his finger, and when I stepped in that direction, my soul immediately went back to my body. Just as fast as I had appeared in this place, I left this place, and I was back in my body, laying on that cot where I knew I should have, my eyes opened. And it took me a good 20 minutes to get to walking again, simply because my entire body had fallen asleep. And I'm almost certain that after having been dead for 8 minutes, that there must have been angels there jump starting everything in my body again, because there would have been no blood flowing anywhere.